Well, hello and welcome to another guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and today our guest is Josh Fonger. Josh is the CEO of WTS Enterprises. He's a business coach, and I was talking to him in the green room. WTS stands for Work the System, which is a book by Sam Carpenter, and Josh basically helps people implement the fundamentals or the system that's outlined in that book. So he's a consultant, coach, and speaker, recognized as leading authority in business performance architecture and CEO of WTS Enterprises. In addition, he has the unique experience of helping hundreds of businesses grow simply using the WTS method. His specialty is taking stressed out entrepreneurs from working in their business to working on their business, using systems so that profit and freedom can become a consistent mechanical reality. Now, I'm going to be blunt and upfront with you guys. Like, that was very generic. Like, everybody's trying to work on their business instead of in their business. I think those terms are really stolen from Michael Gerber and his book E-Myth. But ultimately, what my job today is to figure out what is the secret stuff that Josh has in there. That's his secret sauce. The little nuance that you haven't discovered yet or uncovered yet, and we're going to figure that out in the next 30 minutes. So make sure you stay tuned, listen to this entire episode, because we're bound to have something new that you haven't thought about, or something that you haven't thought about in a certain way that's going to really help you get past something that you're struggling with. Josh, welcome to the show.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for the intro.
Oh, you're welcome. So I like to start things really easy. People don't know, they've never heard of Josh Fonger. Like, who are you as an individual? Give us the broad strokes of just, a little bit of your background and how you ended up becoming a business coach or connected with WTS and Sam Carpenter. Just help us navigate and get a relationship with you before we start.
Sure. Yeah, I'll try to put it in a nutshell for you. But yeah, God's providence. Yeah, I definitely was not trying to become a business consultant. My dad was a small business owner, and he did not like business consultants. And my father-in-law really didn't like business consultants. So I kind of had an aversion to this idea of being a business consultant. And I got my undergraduate in architecture, was in real estate development. And in 2007 and 8, I kind of took a hit, and I was laid off with everyone else that I knew. And could not find any work in real estate. And that was kind of my dream, was to be in real estate development. At the time, I'd already got my master's in business and could not get any work anywhere. So no one hired me. And said, you know what, I'll just become a business consultant because I got an MBA. So why not? I'm in my mid-20s. And ended up getting picked up by some miracle with a consulting group that needed a guy to fly around from place to place to place. In that case, it was flooring stores, and help them with their inside sales and outside sales and their projections and their culture, and help them through bankruptcy, you name it. I was kind of like the field guy, and got a lot of miles at the airport doing that work, and really got burned out doing the work, and realized that the work that I was doing, this took a while to realize, wasn't sticking, right? So I would help a company. Their sales would go up, their expenses would go down, whatever we were trying to focus in on, hiring, firing, you name it. But then a year later, I'd check in with them, and they would be kind of going back to the way things were. Or problems would happen again, or that person that I spent time, training the sales manager would leave, to another company. And I was realizing that ultimately, I'm not, what I'm fixing in these companies is not sticking long term. And through a long story, I ended up living in Bend, Oregon for a while, and I met Sam Carpenter, the author of Work the System. And when I talked to him, he had a different approach to fixing a business, right? And it had to do with actually seeing your company differently, systematically, and then documenting those systems so that whether the people came or went, the infrastructure, the knowledge that was in everyone's heads, including the owners, was actually codified in a way that would allow the company to grow and be stable and be strong. And that was the piece that I was missing, right, in my consulting. So I started to integrate that into my consulting, and then eventually Sam brought me on to do some work for him with his clients. That might have been 15 years ago, and we kind of became good friends, and at that point became business partners. And at this point, he and I run separate companies. Actually, I just called him a few hours ago. So we're still good friends. And I'm the field guy. I'm the sole licensee of the Work the System method. And that's what I do is I help companies see the separate systems in their business and then fix them and then grow. And you're right. It's very similar to what Michael Gerber wrote. And that's a compliment we often get is they say, hey, this reminds me of the E-Myth, only it's like the next book that Michael Gerber should have written is like, how do we actually do this? How do we actually get ourselves out of our business, the day-to-day, and how do we do this? And so Sam documents that in his book, Work the System. Yeah.
Awesome. So this is like a real natural segue into, okay, great. So we get the concept of Michael Gerber's book, and now we want to know how. So what exactly is the system, and how does somebody go about implementing that?
Sure. Yeah. So I would say first off, read the book, but I'm going to summarize it. All right, so I'll summarize it for you. It first starts off with seeing your world as a collection of systems. Sam Carpenter calls it the systems mindset. And so him personally, what happened was that he was up middle of the night. He was sleeping, living at his business, and it was midnight, 2 a.m, and he has this dream that his business was actually all of these parts, these mechanical pieces, and they were laid out on a table. And he thought to himself, this was the premise: if I make each of these pieces, these little machines that I see on this table, if I make them all perfect, and then I combine them back together, I won't have this chaotic, horrible company. I'll have a perfect business. And so that was the the premise, was to see his business not as himself, but as to see it as a separate entity made up of all these separate mechanisms, these separate machines, these separate systems. And then it doesn't become as complicated or as stressful to focus on your business. You just need to take it apart and then, in this case, document each of those systems and then put them back together, which really simplifies fixing a company. So the first thing is the systems mindset. The second big component we help companies with is what we call a strategic objective. And a lot of companies have a vision or a 1-year plan or a 5-year plan, and they have strategies written down. And that's kind of like what this is. It's a 1-page document that just tells everybody, including the owner, hey, this is where we're going. This is how we're going to get there. This is who we're trying to work with, and this is how we're going to work with them. It's a 1-page battle plan for anybody and everybody, so that the owner theoretically could go on a 1-year cruise, hand the next in line with this document and say, hey, as long as you go this direction, we're going to be okay. And for a lot of owners, they kind of have an idea what that is, but they've never taken the time to actually write it and solidify it. And therefore they get distracted and they spin instead of going in a straight line. And so we help companies write that clear strategy. Then we help companies write principles, and they're guidelines for decision making, so that, again, as your team grows and as you're developing your company, not just your company's based on this strategy and principles, people then assimilate around a certain principles, so that the culture is strong. People make decisions the way you would make decisions, and therefore you can trust them more and more to run the business without you having to babysit everybody. And then lastly, we help companies with their SOPs, or we call them working procedures, because there is a way you're making sales, there is a way you're delivering on those sales, there is a way you're paying your bills. Like there is a way you're doing it, and everyone kind of knows how to do it because they're doing it right now, but no one's ever taken the time to look at it and write it down and say, is this really the best way to do it? And does this really work for our long-term goals? And is it scalable? Is it efficient? Is it giving us the desired result we want? And once you take the time to actually write down how you do something, you find out there actually is a better way, or a faster way, or a way that requires lower cost labor to do these various aspects of our business. And hence the title of the book, Work the System, is that you're supposed to work on those systems. And therefore, you eventually your team can do them because you've simplified them so much, and you can then actually be the business owner, or start another company, or open a new office, whatever that might be. So that's the long version of what the methodology is: mindset, strategy, principles, procedures.
Now, I think to some extent, and we've covered this on the podcast a lot, and I think most law firm owners know that they need to have some sort of systems and processes in place in their business. And I think when we look at that and we talk about it, a lot of times the question is how do I do this? How do I document it? How much detail do I need? Where do I start? Those are the kinds of questions that I think people have when they're trying to tackle this. It's interesting that you've taken it from, or Sam takes it from, a top-down approach. Like, start with your overall objective, and then create your principles, and then the systems that are behind those principles. But it still seems like a daunting task for somebody who doesn't have any of this done, right? So the saying goes, how do you eat an elephant? Like, one bite at a time, right? So what are the bites? Where does somebody start, and how do they go about just getting this process going when it seems like something that's so daunting?
Yeah, it is daunting, and that's why you need the strategy. Like, you need to have a strategy long term to stick with it, right? Otherwise, you're going to document your first procedure on how to, have a sales conversation. Then you're going to say, well, that took me like 4 hours. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm 4 hours behind in my normal work. And so then you stop, right? So that's kind of the biggest challenge, is getting people to commit long term to building a company that actually can grow and thrive and scale. And when I know I do a lot of coaching and consulting. So for me, I always start with the owner or the leader, the CEO, because usually they are the bottleneck in their growth, and they know that. And they're usually maxed out on how many hours they can or they want to work. And so unless I can free up some of their personal capacity, they're not going to continue on with doing this. And so by analyzing what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, we could typically say, hey, you're doing this every day, you're doing this twice a week. And is there a way that if we documented this system, somebody else could do this thing? And invariably there is. And so then we'll take that particular procedure, whatever it might be, and then we'll take, okay, step one, what do you do? Step two, and then we will hand it off to somebody else and oversee, make sure that they do it right. Usually once it's handed off, a few tweaks, modifications to be made. And then we do the math and say, well, how many hours, how much time did you save now? And 2 hours a week you've saved. Okay, so now let's do another one and start to get the momentum going. And then once they realize, okay, I'm actually saving some time, and now I have a little bit of breathing room. Now I need to start taking this not just for myself, but if I have management, help my management do this. And then ultimately the goal is simplify things enough so that the newest, the youngest, the greenest folks on your team can do more and more of the work. I had a international tax law attorney I was working with who she worked in the UN for all these years, and then she's like, okay, I'm going to start my own business. And so I was working with her, and she had no one on our team, right? And so she was like, hey, I'm just going to developing this business from thin air. But she knew if she did not simplify things and develop systems in place, she was going to just be the person, and then everyone just work directly with her. And so that's the way they just kind of started one at a time. And then eventually she built out her team. And eventually she had 10 attorneys working underneath her. But it just, you got to start somewhere, right? And I always start with, how do we free up the owner's time?
Now, I like that, and it makes absolute sense. But when the owner has some free time available, there's competing priorities, right? Like, if I I own my own business, if I have some free time, I can write a system or a process, or I can get on the call and potentially sell another client or establish another relationship that could be referring business my way. We can use a number of examples of things that an owner might feel like is a better use of their time or a higher priority item. You're basically saying that this is the solution to all business problems. This is the thing that's going to allow growth or prevent you from not growing. How do we sell that idea to the business owner? How do we get somebody in the frame of mind to really buy into the fact that, like, okay, I have an hour right now, and I should not be picking up the phone and calling somebody. I should be sitting down and documenting one more process.
You're right. It's a very hard sell. What we do is, this is for people who think long-term. If you're thinking short-term, making that next phone call is going to probably yield you faster cash, right? So we only work with people really when they've hit that plateau. Like, I had this one attorney I was working with who had he was multiple degrees, multiple certifications. So he's an engineer and a lawyer. And so he did like patents for complicated tools. And I think he was making like $600,000, $700,000 a year. So he was making good money, but he was working 50 hours a week. If he stopped working, the money was just going to stop. And he knew that he had to do something different, because he would that was it. Like, if I work, I make money. If I don't, I make less. And no one else can do anything I'm doing, because I have it all dialed in. He's a hyper productive guy. And he had to say, you know what, I'm going to actually slow down, for the next 6 months here, and commit to documenting some of the things that I'm doing, and commit to bringing out a team. He had, one assistant helping him at the time, so that I can actually move beyond this plateau, and I can cut my work week in half, right? So it really, it started with his desire. So if the people we're working with are not hungry for something different, we really can't help them, right? And so I don't try to spend too much time convincing them. I just say, hey, we're there when you're ready, but until you're ready, people will they will work hard, and they will make more, and then they'll take a vacation, and they'll work less, and they'll make less, and they're just kind of on that. We call it a yo-yo business, right? They're tied to the string. Their business kind of goes up and down based on their work level, but they can never go beyond that. They're always going to hit a plateau. Some industries, that's $200,000 a year. Some industries, that's $400,000 a year. I had one estate planning group that I work with, and they had 4 employees, but they never had more than 4 employees for like 10 years. They kind of they just could never get beyond that, again, because the owner just was maxed out on what he had to know about and manage and be aware of. And they just, they were stuck in that mold. And it wasn't until he was ready to, okay, we're going to actually go beyond this, that we could start working with him. And so part of our tagline is we work with ambitious business owners. It's those who, they do want to open that second location. They do want to expand, but until they want to, it doesn't make sense, right? There's no point in investing in the systems of your business if you want to just stay where you are, right? You do have to have some big goals. And so I make all the people I work with when I'm coaching them, list out, what are some big goals you have in terms of what you would do with more money, and what would you do if you had more time? And if you have a list of things you would actually do with that extra time and that extra money, then you're willing to actually put in the hours, the investment to get there. But if you're thinking short term, and you're thinking 2% growth or 5% growth, you're not going to really do this, right? Because everything else is going to be faster and easier.
Yeah. So I really like everything that you're saying. The real question is, what's the ease of doing this? I was, as you were talking, I was trying to figure out what's the right way to formulate this question. I think that it's a question of the chicken and the egg,
Mhm.
right? And when somebody is sitting in this place where they've been for 10 years with 4 employees and they need to get out of that, right? Is the solution writing some systems, or is the solution hire an attorney? Right? Like, so really what I'm asking is when somebody's, they're figuring this out, they're trying to get to that next level. Do you put the people in place and then discover where the gaps are and fill it in with not just training them, but then systemizing that? Or do you need to anticipate what's going to happen, have everything ready to go before you go and make that next move?
Okay, so I think if I'm hearing you right, do you document your procedures and then grow your team, or do you grow your team and then have them document the procedures? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you document it as you train them, whatever, either way.
Yeah, well, I would say any and all methods, because the clients I work with, I mean, the train's already moving. Like things are happening. We say the systems are already happening. You're already making sales. You're already paying your bills. You're already delivering your product or service. Like things are happening, and so you can't stop everything and then have this perfect scenario where you're going to like document everything in your business and then hire somebody. Like that's just not reality, right? And so what we say is that as you hire somebody, as you're training them, you're going to be developing the systems for how they do what they do. And you always start with simple, right? So as simple as possible, because it's going to get refined with time. That's a big part of our methodology is that just get something on paper first. Even if it's just a handwritten note. Okay, they'll work on the handwritten note, and then when they start working there, they're probably going to type it up and make it better. And then you're going to look at it, and you're going to add some more to it. And it's going to get better with time, but there needs to be something tangible of which to get better with time. Right? I've got a client right now that has a restaurant, and I'm like, hey, you got to actually write the recipes down instead of every single cook doing things differently, right? I mean, you got to start with something, and there's different catalysts for documenting systems. One is hiring. Yeah, I'm going to hire somebody. We probably should write down what they do, right? Or at least screen record how to do what they do, or at least they shadow me and they record how I'm doing it somewhere. That's definitely a reason to do it. Another reason is I'm going to take a 1 month vacation or 2 week vacation. I had a client where he was going to be gone for a few months because he's going to go backpacking with his son. Okay, that was big motivation to document some of the things that he was doing so that things would run without him there, right? So whatever that catalyst is for you, like if you're going to go to a big convention, okay, we need to document how we prepare for this convention and how we speak at the convention and how we handle leads the convention. Let's get those systems figured out, because that is something that's just happening right now and we're all focused in on it. We might as well not just think about it, we might as well document it. So I don't think it's a chicken and egg. I think it's just the systems are already happening. It's just as you're doing them, the goal is how do you capture how you're doing them. I was working with this church, right? A large church. They have over 1,000 volunteers, and this is in Northern California. And so while I was working with them, they're like, where to begin? Same thing, how to prioritize. And I'm talking with one of their marketing managers, and he's probably making 80 grand a year. This is, again, it's a large church. And as I'm talking with him, he's putting grommets in a vinyl sign, right? And so those are like those little metal circles so that the vinyl sign won't tear, and you can attach string to it and for different events. And churches always have events. And I said, so why are you putting the grommets in this vinyl sign? He's like, well, no one else knows how to do it, and I want to make sure they're done right. I said, I bet that if we, document how to do this, like my 12-year-old son could do this. And he's like, yeah, but I just want to make sure it's done right. And I'm like, the church is paying you like 80 grand a year. So and then I said, give me your phone. I'm going to video record you doing this right now. So ready, set, go. And he's like, okay, this is how you put a grommet in the sign. You got to space them this far. Here's how you use the tool. And here's where we keep the tool. I said, okay, now we have a procedure for how to put grommets into a vinyl sign. Never do that again, right? You got a team of volunteers that want to do something. they can put that in the sign and hang it. I'm sure of it. And so that was kind of the whole point, is that they're stuck, right? Stuck doing the work themselves instead of stuck saying, hey, we could record this some way and someone else could do this. And of course, obviously in a church environment, they can do it for free, right? And so there's a lot of ways to, leverage resources that way.
Now, do you find when somebody is trying to implement this that there's a way that you can guide them that makes it more likely to complete or makes it easier for them? For example, maybe we focus on the fulfillment side of the business first and create systems and processes there. Then we go to intake, sales, marketing, and to do that. Like, is there any science behind, what area of the business to focus on first, or not? I mean, I guess there's the question.
Yeah, I mean, if that was if you were a Fortune 500 company, we'd do a bunch of analysis and find out all the different numbers that would guide a decision. But for small companies, it's where's the fire, or where is the biggest problem, and we just start there. So where is the biggest issue that you're currently having in your business? Oh, it's customer complaints. What are they complaining about? Let's get that system fixed, because that seems to really be causing a lot of stress and headaches and a waste of time. So we really go to where the fire is first and solve some of those issues. Now, beyond that, and then the larger the company is, the more long-term they can think. And so I'll interview the various managers and have them document in a list all the things that they do. What do you do on a daily basis? What do you do on a weekly basis? What do you do on a monthly basis? Just to figure out all those things. And then they come up with a list of 20 or 30 or 50 things. And then we'll say, okay, based on these things, let's prioritize where the biggest opportunity is for more production, where the biggest opportunity is to cut out waste, where the biggest opportunity is for delegation, or where are the most problems. And then we work from that. And it's the 80-20 principle. The first 20 procedures you write are going to be more valuable probably than the next 80 you write. So stick with the ones where the actual activity is, the ones that are going to be run through a lot. And I like to share this example, even though it's not attorneys. When I was working with a small manufacturing company out of Michigan, they had he couldn't figure out which system to pick, because they've been in business for like 40 years, long time. And he said, we're already really efficient. We've been doing this a long time. Everyone knows how to do what they do. So I don't really understand how we're going to get a lot of value out of this. And I said, let's just pick something that happens every day. Let's document it. And so we documented the shift change between first shift, 20 employees on the machines, and second shift, 20 employees on the machine. And there was a 15-minute overlap. And so they documented what the shift change should actually look like. And then a week later, I said, well, what happened? He said, no, not much. We've been doing shift changes for a long time. And we got into the details and started to refine it a little bit. And I said, you've been doing a 15-minute shift change for decades. And based on this, your shift change could be 5 minutes. And so we ran with that. And then we did the math. And just going from a 5-minute shift change based on a 15-minute shift change, that was $100,000 of revenue not spent on payroll, because they were actually working on the machines instead of just slowly kind of hanging out and communicating what was happening between shift 1 and shift 2. And so the point is, we call that mining for gold. Like there are ways of making more money in your business. You just need to look at the details and you'll see that there's waste everywhere. And so, just an example of that. And I think in the case of law firms, you don't get to see physical materials getting wasted. Like you're not going to, throw away a bunch of spoiled inventory at the end of the week, but it's the time. It's like, hey, that could have been done, instead of taking 30 minutes, could have been 25 minutes. Instead of having that, client report take me this much time, it could have been less. Now, if you're billing your clients out by the minute, then maybe you want it to take a long time. But there are different ways to, strategize on your pricing to obviously maximize a law firm.
Yeah, I think with law firms, it's not only how much time it's taking, but it's by whom. And I think that's really important. Is there's a lot of stigma or preconceived notions that people come with, presuming that something needs to be done by a certain person. For example, the best one that I like to share is intake or sales. When you have a new client come in, who's having a sales conversation with them? When somebody first starts their firm, it's the firm owner who happens to be the attorney. So the automatic assumption is that it needs to be an attorney that's in that sales conversation. The reality is that there's a difference between a consult and sales. And if we do a good job differentiating that, you actually can sell legal services without providing any legal advice, which means that you have a potential client come in, a salesman who's a non-attorney should be able to present why they should work with your firm, why your firm is the best one to handle their case, and here's the pricing structure, and here's how to get started, without them ever needing to know what the course of action is for their legal issue. Once they're engaged, they then meet with an attorney and come up with a plan and all that. But or you have a paid consult behind that sales conversation, but that can be completely removed from the attorney / law firm owner. That's something that's difficult for people to wrap their heads around and to try and be willing to invest in their firm in that way, to say, hey, I'm going to offload this from me completely and give it to somebody who actually may be better at doing the job than I am, because they're a professional salesman as opposed to somebody who's just trying to provide a solution to a client that walks through the door.
Yeah, exactly. It's a transition from people buying you, the person to work with, or if they're buying into your brand, your company, your systems, right? And so, yeah, that's a big part of the shift we try to help companies with, is that you want them to buy into working with your company, with your brand, with your product or service, not just buying you. And yeah, I totally agree. The system for how you make the sale can be done better than, they just need to talk to the owner, right? And again,
and case in point, when we outsourced, we brought in like an external sales team to do our own internal sales, to sell our coaching clients. And before that, it was me that was doing the sales. So I would have like a free coaching session with somebody, and at the end, I would offer them an opportunity to work with us. When we engaged that external team, one of the first things that I needed to do was I needed to formalize the objections people have and how to respond to those, and the practice areas that might come through, and how we work specifically with those practice areas. And it made me sit down and really put into writing what I was doing off the cuff in those conversations. But now anybody who has the expertise can come in and get the nuanced information that they need to be able to sell my thing without me needing to train them and hold their hand along the way. So there's definitely a ton of value in formalizing, memorializing what you're doing, so to really make it easy for you to put personnel in the right seat, and have them get up to speed quickly with the job that they need to do.
Yep, totally agree. Yeah, and sales it's definitely a harder thing to systemize in terms of getting someone to be as good as the owner, or as good as the partner. But it totally can be, right? It totally can be. If you break it out into a process and you have standardized pricing, you have standardized services, the easier it is to scale it out, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I did with a trademark attorney. Same kind of thing. It was like she had to sell every single person, and then she realized actually this is, packages, package A, B, C, and how do we just churn these things out much faster at a higher profit margin? And then she didn't have to do that anymore. And there's, depending on the kind of firm you have, and ultimately your strategy, then there's different systems involved. So totally right.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point that, like, if you're making on the, off the cuff decisions about how much am I going to charge this person, it's kind of difficult to put somebody into that role. Like, how, where'd you come up with that number? I don't know, it just felt right. I looked at them, I looked at the car they were driving and decided how much they can spend, right? Like it's just, that's not the way you want to approach it. You want to approach it from, this is our cost input to deliver a result for this client. We need to make X profit margin, therefore our price needs to be this thing. And then, formalize that. And if it varies depending on something, figure out what that variable is, so that somebody in the sales process can identify that variable and then give the right quote or the right information to the client, up front. So really good points that you're making. We're almost out of time, and I want to just ask you, there's a lot covered in that book, and clearly we're not going to cover everything in this conversation. I asked you a number of questions, try to uncover some of the things that our listeners might be asking. Is there anything that I should have asked you that we should have discussed that we kind of missed in this conversation that is worth going to?
Yeah, no, all great questions. I mean, I'm sure we'll get to it at the end, but the main reason why I'm here is to help business owners, in this case, law firm owners, get unstuck with where they're currently at to scale. And so that's kind of the main reason why I'm here, is hopefully this is inspiring some folks that actually there is a way, and it's not some kind of magic new artificial intelligence marketing Facebook ad. It's really just, the way any company goes from being small to large is they take the time to develop the documented systems of their business, which, cuts down the stress, cuts down the complexity, allows their team to be onboarded and to actually enjoy their work more, increases profit, reduces risk. I mean, and that's really just the message I want people to know, is that that's why our company exists, and that you don't have to, and this is going to be maybe against you, Moshe, so I'm going to apologize in advance. You don't have to find the next shiny object, listen to the next podcast, read the next 10 books, thinking that this mysterious, new revelation out there is going to help you. It really just comes down to focusing in on, hey, what are we doing, and can we do it better, faster, less expensive, better experience, charge more? And let's just do that. Let's just focus in on that in a very intentional way. And the results will take care of themselves. We just say, hey, if you work your systems, the systems will take care of the results. And so you don't have to go searching out there for some mysterious new way. You really just need to get focused, and things will get better.
It's interesting, and because you said, it might go against me, and you hope that it doesn't, it isn't taken that way. If people weren't listening to this episode right now, then they wouldn't be getting the information from you that they don't need more information, right? So it's a very interesting meta kind of, concept to think about. I had a conversation. So for those who don't know, we batch record our podcast. So today's a podcast recording day. I've got 6 podcast interviews lined up, kind of back to back with each other. So I had the opportunity to speak with Cameron Herold right before you. And he wrote a book called The Second in Command. And it's all about leveraging a COO in your business. And it's interesting because he made a statement in that conversation, which is very similar to what you just shared. And he basically said that, entrepreneurs are really good at going out and getting knowledge and going out and finding information and learning new things and educating themselves and increasing their skill set. The reality is that that's only 10% of the journey. And the other 90% is finding the right people and developing the team and stepping into the role of leader, so that other people are building your business for you, so that other people are doing the work for you. And I think that, that 10% is a really good, I don't know if that number is scientific, but that's a really good way of looking at it. It's not that you don't need the next thing. You don't need that information. You don't need the knowledge. That knowledge is not what's going to get you there. And we should always continue to educate ourselves, but don't look at that as the solution to your problem. Look at that as enhancing your ability to be a good owner, CEO, whatever you want to call yourself. The reality is recognize that successful businesses are grown through developing and increasing your team and the productivity of that team. And in this conversation, Josh is highlighting the fact that in order to do that, you need to have your stuff systemized and memorialized in a way that you can easily continue to grow and expand that team without needing to go back to the drawing board every time that you want to make a new hire. And I think that those messages go hand in hand. They work really nicely together. And the reality is that you need both, right? Like if all you did was create systems, but then didn't do anything to give those systems to somebody to execute, then you didn't do anything either. So you need to work the system, but there's a reason for it. And the reason for it is because the key to growth, the key to success is to leverage other people's time and expertise and knowledge. And you do that by putting that into your business in an efficient way. And that's through working the system. Josh, as we come to a close, I want to ask you to do two things. So the first is share with our listeners like one parting piece of wisdom, piece of advice that you want to, and you might have just touched on that on the synopsis you gave, but give you an opportunity to do that again. And then where should somebody go to learn more about the book, about you? If something that you shared intrigued them, or if they feel like this is the place that they need to focus on, and you're the guy to do it, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, in terms of imparting wisdom, nothing comes to mind other than one of the best tools that helps someone become more productive is just listing out every single thing that they do during the course of the day, time track it, and then identify what they can automate, delegate, delete, optimize, batch. And I have yet to do that with an entrepreneur without finding, 5 hours, 10 hours a week that is being wasted. Both on personal stuff and business stuff. And so I would say, if you do want to find more time, it's there. And it's just that you're not as efficient as you think you are. So that'd be one thing. Otherwise, the way to find us is to go to WTSenterprises.com. There you can get a summary of the book for free. You can also do a business systems assessment if you want to for free. And of course, you can reach out to me. I'm always happy to work with new clients. That's why I'm here. I love doing what I do. I love coaching, love consulting. And hopefully I'll get a chance to talk to some people from your audience and help them out with their companies.
Awesome. And really appreciate your time, Josh, for being here today or sharing your expertise. It's been a great conversation. Folks, if you enjoyed this conversation, you want to take the next step with Josh, we're going to link all that stuff up in the show notes. So just look in the description of this podcast episode in the resources section, or visit profitwithlaw.com, where we take notes for you. Turn every episode into a blog post article where you can read the synopsis, read the information of what was covered, but also get the links to follow through with any of the resources shared on the show, which will include Work the System, the book, as well as Josh's website and social handles and all that stuff. If you are not subscribed to the show and you would like to know when we release a new episode, which we do every single week, every Thursday, we have that waiting for you when you wake up. Make sure to hit the subscribe button in your podcast player so you get notified when it is live. Also, you may not be aware, but in March, we started a YouTube channel. It is brand new, but for being brand new, my team is doing an amazing job of putting a ton of video content up there. We're leaning deep into YouTube Shorts. If you want to go and get a dose of 90 seconds of amazing information and advice, you want to check out our shorts. Otherwise, we also every single week are releasing a brand new video that is somewhere between 3 to 6 minutes that provides a really valuable information. It's separate from this podcast. We're also putting the podcast episodes up there. So definitely check it out. profitwithlaw.com/YouTube will take you directly to our YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button there so that you get notified by YouTube when we release new videos, which we do a few times a week, putting a lot of stuff out there for your free listening pleasure or viewing pleasure. Hopefully we'll see you next or be in your ears next Thursday as we bring another amazing guest here on the show. Thank you very much, Josh, for being here. And folks, take care, enjoy your weekend, and we'll catch you on the next episode.